I just want to post a quick message. I got all this inquiries about my car thing this morning. I was in a car accident this morning. I'm fine.
Alec Baldwin, a star who once made the whole world laugh, a man who could command the smiles of millions and was once considered the very soul of 1990s Hollywood. He could silence an entire film set with just a glance, yet make headlines explode with a single outburst. For more than 4 decades, Alec Baldwin has lived between two extremes, a brilliant actor and a man unable to control himself. From The Hunt for Red October to 30 Rock, he delivered sharp, commanding performances. But off-screen, Baldwin's life unraveled in scandals, public altercations, reckless words, a bitter divorce from Kim Basinger, and later, the Rust tragedy, the fatal gunshot that claimed a colleague's life and sent his career spiraling. His story is that of a man full of contradictions. The harder he tried to untangle his life, the deeper he seemed trapped in it. At 67, Alec Baldwin is no longer Hollywood's flawless star, only a man who once had everything and lost almost all of it to himself. The question remains, does Alec Baldwin still have the strength to rise again, or is he merely clinging to the last flickers of his fading fame? Alexander Ray Baldwin III was born on April 3, 1958, in Amityville, New York, and grew up in Nassau Shores, Long Island. His family was Irish Catholic with 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. As the eldest, Alec carried the weight of expectation from an early age. His father, Alexander Baldwin Jr., was a high school history teacher and football coach, known for his strict discipline and near-zero tolerance for mistakes. During one argument, he once bit his own hand to keep from striking his son. That image stayed with Alec forever, a mix of fear and compassion for a man who was both stern and fragile. His mother, Carol Newcomb Martineau, was gentle and soft-spoken, with Irish, English, French-Canadian, German, and Scottish roots. The Baldwins weren't poor, but money was always tight. Debt loomed, and financial strain was constant. Alec learned early on that stability was a luxury. He both admired and feared his father, and a man who taught him that discipline was survival, yet filled the house with tension. In their home, shouting was more familiar than laughter, and Alec learned to stay silent, to stay safe. Growing up in that environment, he developed 2 opposing sides, calm on the surface, volatile underneath. As the eldest, he was expected to lead, to excel, to be strong. But the harder he tried, the more he felt lost between duty and the quiet need to be heard. Alec attended Alfred G. Burner High School, where he wasn't remarkable academically but was known for his diligence. After school, he worked various odd jobs, waiter, receptionist, stock boy, each teaching him about responsibility and limits. From those experiences, he developed a quiet defiance, a refusal to live by someone else's mold. After graduation, he enrolled at George Washington University, majoring in political science. He even ran for student body president and lost by just 2 votes. It was his first real setback, but also a turning point. Years later, he would recall, "I realized I didn't want to be in politics. I just wanted to be seen." Back in New York, Alec entered one of the most uncertain phases of his life, until a friend casually suggested, "Why don't you try acting?" He applied to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, was accepted, and even earned a full scholarship. For the first time, he found a space where he didn't have to shout to be heard. Acting gave him his voice, not as the responsible eldest son, but as himself. His full name was Alexander Ray Baldwin III, but when he stepped onto the stage, he chose to simplify it, Alec Baldwin, a name easier to remember and perhaps a way to start over. When Alec Baldwin let go of his political dreams and entered NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, he had no idea he was stepping onto a very different kind of stage. One where every word, every gesture would be dissected by millions. He began with the role of Billy Aldrich in the TV soap The Doctors, 1980-1982, slowly making his way into television through Cutter to Houston, Knots Landing, and Dress Gray. Baldwin didn't blow up overnight through scandal or luck. He climbed one rung at a time through small, often forgotten roles loaded with psychological depth. In an interview with Interview magazine, Baldwin once called his early TV years a nightmare, a fast-paced, uncreative, pressure-filled world. "Every time I worked with them, it was a goddamn nightmare." But that frustration only sharpened him. It made him one of the few young actors of his generation who dared to demand truth in every scene. On Broadway, he caught attention with Loot 1986 and Serious Money 1987, two plays that earned him recognition from New York's theater critics as a genuine talent. A director later recalled, "He didn't just act, he wanted to control the entire atmosphere of the room." Then came 1988, the turning point. Within a few months, Baldwin appeared in 5 major films: Tim Burton's bizarre classic Beetlejuice, Working Girl, Married to the Mob, Talk Radio, and She's Having a Baby. He was everywhere. Horror, drama, dark comedy, romance. No young actor of his time was as versatile. Yet just as Hollywood prepared to roll out the red carpet, Baldwin began to fear the very thing he'd achieved. In a 1989 interview, he admitted, "I'm afraid that one day people will only remember how I look, not how I act." It sounded modest, but it was really a premonition of the inner conflicts that would haunt him for life. Then came The Hunt for Red October, 1990, which elevated Baldwin to the rank of leading man. As Jack Ryan, the calm intellect in the chaos of the Cold War, he captivated audiences not with Hollywood flash, but with an icy composure and eyes that always seemed to be hiding something. But the spotlight couldn't conceal his temper. During The Marrying Man, 1991, co-starring Kim Basinger, who would later become his wife, Baldwin was the picture of romantic charm on screen and a storm behind the scenes. According to Premiere magazine, the crew dubbed it the production from hell. Baldwin threw chairs, smashed cameras, cursed staff, and refused to film scenes he thought were stupid. The producers even printed T-shirts for the crew that read, "I survived the marrying man." The film bombed, earning less than half its budget. But the chaos left a lasting mark. Hollywood began to tread carefully around him. A year later, Baldwin took a risk with the surreal romance Prelude to a Kiss, 1992, alongside Meg Ryan. It was poetic but hard to connect with audiences. The film flopped, yet Baldwin persisted, determined to prove he was more than just a handsome face. That same year, he appeared briefly in Glengarry Glen Ross, and though he was on screen for only a few minutes, his "always be closing" monologue became legendary. Critics agreed. Alec Baldwin could turn a line of dialogue into a weapon. Success or failure, he never stopped. By the mid-1990s, Baldwin had grown more powerful, ready for the toughest roles, and equally ready for the public's harshest reactions. It was then that his path to greatness, and the first visible cracks in his carefully built image, began to take shape. After nearly 2 decades of both triumph and turmoil, Alec Baldwin entered the 21st century a changed man, mature, intense, and no longer interested in pleasing anyone. In 2003, he returned to film with The Cooler, a gritty, smoke-filled indie about broken dreams in Las Vegas. Baldwin played Shelley Caplow, a ruthless yet desperate casino boss, a man critics compared to a wounded animal refusing to fall. The role earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor, along with glowing reviews from The Hollywood Reporter and Variety, which called it one of the most astonishing acting resurrections of the decade. For the first time, Hollywood no longer saw Baldwin as a handsome leading man, but as an artist who had lived long enough to understand the darkness inside people. But the true turning point came in 2006, when he shifted back to television with 30 Rock. As Jack Donaghy, the GE executive who wore his tie like armor and spoke as if negotiating with the world, Baldwin found his second identity. According to Rolling Stone, the character was so perfectly aligned with Alec Baldwin that it's impossible to separate the two. Both wield the same kind of power: sharp, satirical, and dangerous. Across 7 seasons and 139 episodes, 30 Rock became a landmark of American television. Baldwin won 3 Emmys, 2 Golden Globes, and received 7 SAG Award nominations, numbers most career TV actors could only dream of. More than just a role, Jack Donaghy turned Baldwin into a pop culture icon, the true TV tycoon, a man who made audiences laugh while forcing them to reflect on how power and language shape modern life. Cinema never left him behind either. Baldwin continued to appear in acclaimed projects like Martin Scorsese's The Departed and Woody Allen's Blue Jasmine, both proving that age had not dulled his edge. Then came The Boss Baby, 2017, where he voiced an infant with the tone of a Wall Street CEO. Variety called it a role born for Baldwin, equal parts serious and bitingly ironic. The film grossed over $528 million worldwide, earned an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature, and launched a successful franchise. To date, films featuring Alec Baldwin have grossed over $7.5 billion globally, an impressive figure for an actor who never chased box office fame, choosing instead to stand in the fragile space between humor and tragedy, power and downfall. Baldwin once reflected on the day in 1984 when he nearly died from a drug overdose, a moment that profoundly changed his life. Now widely celebrated for his impersonation of President Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live, Baldwin revisited that memory in a candid interview with CBS's Sunday Morning in East Hampton, New York, aired on April 2nd. Speaking to Rita Braver, he discussed playing Trump, his family, his path into acting, and that terrifying night in 1984 when he almost didn't survive. "I don't talk about that much," Baldwin said quietly. "It's a deep part of my life. Getting sober very early. I got clean when I was 26. His past was turbulent. Much of it played out in public. But Baldwin would later confront it all again in his memoir. And then, in 2016, at a time when America was bitterly divided by politics, Alec Baldwin returned to Saturday Night Live with a performance that no one could ignore: Donald Trump. Wearing an orange wig, heavy makeup, and a deliberately drawn-out voice, Baldwin didn't just parody the sitting president. He turned satire itself into a form of resistance through laughter. Each episode sent ratings soaring, and Baldwin, once dismissed as a washed-up actor, suddenly found himself back at the center of popular culture, like a torch igniting the anger of an era. The role earned him his 3rd Emmy Award, but more importantly, it restored the image of an Alec Baldwin long buried beneath scandal. Now the public saw an artist unafraid to speak, to mock, to question a system of power that most others dared not confront. In an interview with CBS News, Baldwin described the experience with a mix of humor and disbelief. "I have to say, 60 to 75% of the people I meet treat me like I'm Jonas Salk, the man who cured polio. They come up and say, 'Oh my God, thank you. What you're doing is really important.'" But behind the laughter lay another kind of exhaustion. In his memoir, Nevertheless, a memoir, HarperCollins, 2017, Baldwin reflected on the people he admired, his Long Island childhood, his battles with cocaine and alcohol, and his long, bruising war with the media. He wrote, "The thing is, the past is the past. I'm really going to bury my past with this book. I don't ever want to talk about it again." It was a rare confession, not from a star seeking attention, but from a man worn out by too many fights with himself. Alec Baldwin has never been a perfect celebrity. He doesn't try to please everyone, yet it is precisely that imperfection, his candor, his volatility, his sharp intelligence, that makes him impossible to ignore, whether one loves or hates him. And that may be the greatest paradox of Alec Baldwin's success, a brilliant career forever shadowed by anger, controversy, and the weight of his own legend. After conquering fame and artistic acclaim, Alec Baldwin entered a new phase of his life: love, marriage, and the pursuit of becoming a complete man not just on screen, but in reality. Yet, much like the intense, conflicted characters he portrayed, Baldwin's private life was never calm. Alec Baldwin met Kim Basinger in 1990 while co-starring in The Marrying Man. On screen, they were passionate lovers. Off-screen, they quickly became one of Hollywood's most sought-after couples of the early 1990s. He was the rising star with a deep, raspy voice and an unreadable gaze, while she was the alluring blonde who had just won an Oscar for LA Confidential. When they came together, the press called it a match made in destiny. In 1993, they married, a sweet, romantic wedding straight out of a classic love story. 2 years later, their daughter, Ireland Baldwin, was born, completing the picture of a perfect Hollywood family. For a brief time, they lived like royalty, wealthy, adored, untouchable. But behind the smiles and red carpets lay fractures too deep to mend. Baldwin was fiery, impulsive, introspective, and guarded. Kim was outgoing, independent, and intolerant of his unpredictable anger. Between them grew a gulf of clashing temperaments, parenting styles, work habits, and egos too large to coexist. The marriage collapsed in 2002, but the real nightmare had just begun. Their divorce turned into one of Hollywood's most brutal custody battles, dragging on for 7 years and costing over $3 million in legal fees. Both accused each other of being an unfit parent. The media swarmed in, and young Ireland, only 7 years old, was caught in an adult war with no end in sight. For Alec Baldwin, this was the period when his public image began to fracture, not because of his career, but because of his role as a husband and father, something no director or script could control. And from there, the true tragedy began. Before his first marriage, Alec Baldwin had already faced an enemy more dangerous than any role he'd ever played: himself. In his memoir, Nevertheless, a memoir, and in an interview on Good Morning America, he revealed for the first time his battle with drugs and alcohol, addictions that nearly killed him in the mid-1980s. "I started drinking as a teenager," Baldwin recalled. "By the time I got into acting, I was drowning in cocaine, alcohol, and tranquilizers every single day. I didn't know what was happening. My chest felt like it was going to explode. Then I blacked out. That was the moment he realized he was dying from his own habits." On February 23, 1985, Alec Baldwin woke up in a hotel room drenched in sweat and knew that if he didn't stop, he wouldn't live past 27. He decided to quit drugs and alcohol for good and has never looked back since. "I'm glad I got clean," he said. "Not many people do it that young. Those 2 years, trapped in that darkness, using every day, drinking every day. God, it was miserable. It was pure pain." Ironically, his battle with addiction coincided with the first glimmers of his career's success, when he was cast in Knots Landing, 1984 to 1985. And only a few years later, the hunt for Red October would turn him into a star, as if fate had granted him a second chance at redemption. Baldwin has often admitted that his lifelong impulsiveness, anger, and fear of losing control, the very traits that kept landing him in trouble, stem from the residual trauma of addiction and a survivor's mentality. "You can stop drinking, stop using drugs," he said, "but you never stop fearing that you'll go back. That shadow is always there. You just learn how to live with it." Since then, Baldwin has always considered himself lucky, not just for his career, but for his survival. "I've been lucky in my work," he told Stephanopoulos, "but I've been luckier in my personal life. I have a family, and if I had to choose, I'd choose that every time." Sobriety saved Alec Baldwin from a dark fate, but it didn't make him immune to pain. The addictions receded, yet the fear of losing control remained, especially during the suffocating years of divorce, court orders, and the growing distance from his daughter. Court-scheduled phone calls turned fatherhood into a timed ritual, and with just one missed call, the entire defense system inside him detonated. Then, in April 2007, as Baldwin's custody battle with ex-wife Kim Basinger dragged into its exhausting fifth year, a private voicemail was leaked online, and his career, along with his reputation, collapsed overnight. The 2-minute recording, left for his then 11-year-old daughter Ireland, captured Baldwin's voice, seething with anger and humiliation. "You are a rude, thoughtless little pig." Baldwin had lost his temper after Ireland failed to answer a court-scheduled call. In the heat of rage, he lashed out not only at his daughter but also at Basinger. "I don't give a damn if you're 11 or 12 or if your mother's a thoughtless pain in the ass. You've made me feel like a fool." He even threatened to fly to Los Angeles that very day to straighten your ass out. TMZ published the uncensored recording, shocking the public with the sheer venom in his tone, not as an actor but as a father. The fallout was immediate. A Los Angeles judge suspended Baldwin's visitation rights. Headlines blared, "The final blow to Hollywood's favorite dad." His recovering career froze overnight. Talk shows, family therapists, and millions of viewers joined the debate. Was this the real Alec Baldwin? Or the emotional collapse of a father pushed beyond endurance? Baldwin later issued a public apology on his website, admitting he had been driven to the edge by years of enforced distance. "I'm sorry for losing my temper with my daughter," he wrote, "but it breaks my heart that a voicemail, sealed under court order, was causing pain to the very child it was about." His lawyers filed motions alleging that Basinger's team might have been involved in the illegal disclosure, arguing it was a calculated move to destroy Baldwin's credibility both in court and in the media. Public opinion split sharply. Some said Baldwin's outburst was unforgivable, especially toward a child. Others, including close friends, defended him as a father breaking under unbearable frustration. Basinger's spokesperson gave a terse response. The voicemail speaks for itself. But Baldwin refused to stay silent. In a statement to Extra, he said, "For the sake of my daughter, I'll do what her mother seems incapable of. Remain silent and follow the court's order." Those close to Baldwin said he made repeated efforts to reach out, apologize, and rebuild his relationship with Ireland. In later years, Ireland, now an adult, confirmed that she and her father had managed to repair their bond. But the scars left by the media firestorm have never truly faded. The voicemail scandal left a stain that shadowed Alec Baldwin's entire career. But it also exposed the fragility and torment of a man torn between being an artist and a lonely father caught in an endless domestic war. The 2007 voicemail wasn't just a PR disaster. It raised a deeper question. When a human being, famous or not, is pushed to the limits of pain and helplessness, can they still control their words? Anyone who's ever been a parent, who's felt estranged, misunderstood, or stripped of their place in a child's life, knows that anger in those moments isn't just emotion. It's a cry for rescue. Baldwin was wrong to say what he said, but does that mistake truly define who he is? Or does it reveal something more human? That behind the image of a powerful, composed man stood a wounded, isolated father, battling his own emotions just to stay afloat. Divorce is an adult problem, yet the ones who bear its weight most deeply are the children. Legal wars, media headlines, the tug of war between two people who once loved each other. All of it collapses onto a child's unguarded heart. Ireland Baldwin grew up inside that storm, and the infamous voicemail was only the visible surface of a much deeper, unhealed pain. Today, the two share a close relationship, and Ireland has publicly defended her father against the criticism. He realized he needed to change, and he did, she wrote on her blog. Now, he's healthy, happily married, and expecting another child. He's moved on, so why can't you? So perhaps the real question for us, as outsiders, is this. Should we keep reopening wounds that are finally healing, or learn to step back and see a fuller, more complex person, one made of both mistakes and redemption? In 2012, after the wreckage of his marriage to Kim Basinger, Alec Baldwin once again chose love, this time with Hilaria Thomas, a yoga instructor 26 years his junior. They met at the Pure Food and Wine restaurant in New York, and within a few months went from a passing glance to a warm wedding at St. Patrick's Old Cathedral. Baldwin was 54, Hilaria just 28, a pairing that seemed improbable yet deeply infatuated. Their marriage quickly became the image of a modern family ideal, Hilaria, lively, contemporary, and ever-present on social media chronicling motherhood, and Alec, once known for his temper, now soft-spoken in the role of father and husband. The couple welcomed 7 children together: Carmen, Rafael, Leonardo, Romeo, Eduardo, Maria Lucia, and Ilaria, forming a true Baldwin family in every sense. But in late 2020, American media erupted with what came to be known as Spanish-gate. Online sleuths uncovered that Hilaria, long presented as a Spanish-born woman, had in fact been born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, not Mallorca as she had previously claimed. Her accented English, childhood anecdotes, and Spanish-language interviews were dissected one by one, leaving the public feeling, as one outlet put it, charmingly deceived. The revelation quickly became a punchline across forums and late-night comedy shows, turning the Baldwin household, already fragile, into a tabloid spectacle. Although Hilaria later clarified that she had always lived between two cultures and never intended to mislead anyone, the mockery persisted for months. Yet, through the noise, Alec and Hilaria stood together. In June 2024, they celebrated their 12th wedding anniversary with public tributes on social media. Good and bad, ups and downs, 7 kids, plus Ireland, Andre, and Holland. 4 dogs, 4 cats, Alec wrote. Although there have been difficult times for me, I wouldn't trade any of it. You are my gift. Meanwhile, Hilaria shared her own heartfelt message. We hold tightly to our family and friends for comfort and strength. I'm so lucky to have you and our children. Somehow, amid scandals and scrutiny, they preserved what mattered most, their private core, a noisy, chaotic, but loving household. That same year, they announced The Baldwins, a TLC reality show offering viewers a glimpse inside their hectic home, which, as Alec put it, is exactly the way we love it. The identity scandal may have sparked doubt, but it was how they faced it, without denial, without collapse, that defined this marriage. A family, after all, isn't built solely on truth, but on the patience to endure what others might deem unforgivable. Alec Baldwin is a gifted artist, and also a slow-burning bomb in real life. If on screen he could make an audience laugh or hold its breath with a single look, off-screen that same look has stopped more than a few paparazzi, reporters, even passers-by in their tracks. In 2011, Baldwin was removed from an American Airlines flight for refusing to turn off his phone while playing Words with Friends. The incident seemed trivial, but it delayed the flight, angered passengers, and embarrassed the airline. A photo of Baldwin sitting silently in the airport, eyes wide and his hand hiding the phone, quickly became a viral symbol of mockery. 2 years later, in 2013, he faced accusations of using homophobic slurs during a dispute with a reporter. The episode led to the suspension of his television show and again made him the focus of public condemnation. Baldwin admitted in a piece for Vulture, "I am bitter, defensive, and hate life more than I want to admit." In that editorial, he announced a farewell to public life, saying he would leave New York, the city that had been both his stage and home since 1979. "Public life has changed," he wrote. "Predatory photographers and cameramen stand right in front of you, your wife, your children. They tempt you." Baldwin said he regretted shouting at paparazzi, but he also insisted they are not blameless. The rupture with the public came not only from words, but from actions. In November 2013, just hours after a woman who had stalked him, Genevieve Sabourin, was sentenced to 210 days in jail, Baldwin was recorded chasing a photographer who was approaching his wife and child. "Get away from my wife and child!" he shouted. When another reporter filmed him, Baldwin turned and cursed directly into the camera, using slurs and abusive language. Shortly after leaving Manhattan court, he was heard saying, "I hope you choke to death." Before the car drove off, he lowered the window and sneered, "Did you choose this job because you failed at everything else?" That same year, when Vanity Fair asked if he'd return to Twitter, Baldwin answered flatly, "Never." At the funeral of his friend, actor James Gandolfini, he said, "Jimmy didn't care about social media. He lived honestly and was loved. I wish my daughter would grow up not knowing her father was once a public man." Yet Twitter was precisely where Baldwin sometimes let his anger loose. When the Daily Mail reported that his wife Hilaria had tweeted during Gandolfini's funeral, Alec lashed out, calling the female reporter a liar, vowing to find her and teach her a lesson, and even venomously saying, "I will tweet at your funeral." Those words forced him to delete his personal account. Soon after, the New York Post became the target of his fury. Following an altercation with an African-American photographer, he faced accusations of racism. Baldwin retorted, "Amazing. Now the Post says I'm racist?" When pressed about the incident, he coldly replied, "I want you to choke." In June 2012, he was accused of shoving a photographer for the New York Daily News and tweeted, "Paparazzi this morning almost smashed my camera in my face." He added a violent hashtag, "All paparazzis should be waterboarded," and even invoked Trayvon Martin in a reckless comparison. "I think if the paparazzo wore a hoodie and I shot him, it probably wouldn't be a problem." Those outbursts were nothing new. As early as 1995, just 3 days after his daughter Ireland was born, Baldwin was arrested for punching a cameraman who tried to film the baby. It was the first clear sign that he could not bear seeing his family turned into tabloid prey. In 2018, he was arrested again after a scuffle over a parking spot in New York. Baldwin denied punching the man, but was still ordered to attend anger management classes. And most recently, in 2024, he was accused of shoving a street performer inside a cafe after being confronted about politics. Witnesses claimed Baldwin forced the man out and locked the door behind him. Talent and temper. Those two sides have always coexisted in Alec Baldwin. The more famous he became, the thinner the layer separating charm from rage. Each incident not only fueled public doubt, but slowly began to overshadow the very career he had spent decades building. At times, his impulsiveness even crossed national borders. On a TV program, Baldwin once joked that he wanted to buy a Filipino wife, a remark that infuriated Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr., who vowed to punch him if he ever set foot in Manila. Though Baldwin later issued a public apology, the Philippine government barred him from entering the country, a bitter price for what was meant as an offhand joke. And then there was Genevieve Saburin, the woman who once worked as his assistant and claimed to be obsessed with Alec. The saga dragged on for years before ending with her imprisonment, becoming more than a scandalous footnote. It stood as a stark reminder of how Baldwin has always been drawn or trapped into the same vortex of emotion, media, and anger, a spiral he never truly managed to escape. On October 21, 2021, at the Rust film set in Bonanza Creek Ranch, New Mexico, a routine rehearsal turned into catastrophe. Alec Baldwin, both the film's star and one of its producers, held a prop gun during a camera-blocking scene. But the gun wasn't loaded with blanks. It contained a live round. That single bullet killed cinematographer Halyna Hutchins, 42, and wounded director Joel Souza. According to the Santa Fe County Sheriff's investigation, the tragedy stemmed from a chain of severe safety failures. The Colt .45 Baldwin held was supposed to be a cold gun, meaning it contained only dummy rounds used for close-up shots. But a live bullet had been mistakenly loaded. Investigators later discovered that crew members had used the same weapon for live target practice during breaks, allowing real ammunition to mix with dummy rounds in the prop box. When Assistant Director Dave Halls handed the gun to Baldwin, he failed to check it and shouted, "Cold gun!" signaling it was safe. Baldwin trusted the call and began rehearsing. A split second later, the gun fired. In subsequent investigations, Baldwin maintained that he never pulled the trigger. But an FBI forensic report concluded that the revolver could not have discharged without a trigger pull. The central question soon followed. Who was responsible for the live round and for Halyna Hutchins' death? Soon after, Baldwin and armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed were both charged with involuntary manslaughter. Gutierrez-Reed was sentenced to 18 months in prison in April 2024, while Baldwin's legal battle took a far more complicated turn. The charges were dropped in April 2023, refiled in January 2024, and ultimately dismissed in July 2024 after the court ruled that prosecutors had withheld crucial evidence, a serious violation of due process. Baldwin later filed a countersuit against New Mexico prosecutors, accusing them of wrongful prosecution and of turning him into a scapegoat for a systemic failure. Though legally exonerated, his reputation never recovered. In an emotional interview with George Stephanopoulos, Baldwin broke down. "She was my friend. I never wanted this to happen." His wife, Hilaria Baldwin, later revealed that her husband lived with survivor's guilt and required psychological treatment after the incident. Still, the Rust crew decided to finish the film, as a tribute to Halyna Hutchins. Production resumed in April 2023, with Hutchins's widower, Matthew Hutchins, serving as executive producer under a court-approved settlement. Cinematographer Bianca Klein replaced Helena, and the team implemented far stricter safety protocols. In November 2024, Rust premiered at Poland's Kameramage Film Festival, an event dedicated to honoring cinematographers. Tickets sold out within hours, but as Deadline reported, despite the sold-out screening, the room was half empty and the atmosphere was somber. Once again, Rust became a haunting paradox of Hollywood, a finished film that no one truly wanted to celebrate. The movie closed with a dedication to Helena Hutchins, written in both English and Ukrainian. On May 2, 2025, Rust was released worldwide to mixed reactions. Praise for its cinematography and Baldwin's performance, but overwhelming discomfort about its existence. Critics called it a film that cannot be separated from the shadow of death. Rachel Morrison, cinematographer of Black Panther, wrote, "I honor Helena's legacy, but I cannot support promoting the very film that killed her." Whatever one's view, the Rust tragedy transcended a mere workplace accident. It became a historical scar on American cinema, a grim reminder that between art and reality, a single lapse can cost a life. And for Alec Baldwin, it remains the defining tragedy of his career, whether or not the world ever forgives him. Alec Baldwin stands as one of the most distinctive figures in American film and television over the past 4 decades. With his unmistakable voice and an acting range that moves effortlessly between drama and comedy, he has left an enduring mark through performances in Glengarry Glen Ross, The Cooler, and especially 30 Rock, where his portrayal of Jack Donaghy earned him 3 Emmy Awards and cemented his place as the embodiment of corporate satire. Baldwin's influence extends far beyond his roles. He represents a new kind of mature artist in modern Hollywood, talented, outspoken, and unafraid to confront his own flaws. He helped reshape the public's perception of what it means to be a star, not a flawless icon, but a real person with both strength and weakness. The 2021 Rust shooting remains the most devastating chapter of his career, and at the same time, a solemn reminder of the importance of safety and accountability in filmmaking. Though legally resolved, it will forever remain a part of his legacy. Today, Alec Baldwin is remembered as an artist of deep and lasting influence. A man who left behind both iconic performances and painful lessons about the fragile line between fame and responsibility. His legacy lies not only in the characters he played, but also in the way he forced audiences to see artists as what they truly are: human, complex, and profoundly imperfect. In 2025, at 67 years old, Alec Baldwin no longer appears frequently on film sets or red carpets. He has chosen a different kind of stage, his own home. Together with his wife, Hilaria Baldwin, he launched the reality TV series The Baldwins on TLC, inviting viewers into the chaotic yet affectionate world of a family with 7 small children. The show immediately generated massive attention. Its trailer racked up over 10 million views in just 1 week, becoming a trending topic across social media and late-night talk shows. People were drawn not only by the size of the family, but also by the Baldwin name, forever linked to one of Hollywood's most infamous tragedies, the Rust shooting. Yet with the spotlight came controversy. Some viewers praised the show as authentic and heartfelt, showcasing Baldwin's effort to rebuild his life after crisis. Moments of him playing with his children or Hilaria teaching yoga in the living room were described as surprisingly warm and human. But others were far less forgiving. The Guardian called it a new low for reality television, while Vulture wrote, "Behind the smiles lies a desperate attempt at image rehabilitation." Many Reddit users dismissed the series as a PR campaign disguised as family TV. The shadow of rust still follows Baldwin. Though criminal charges over the death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins were dismissed in July 2024, he continues to face legal fallout. In early 2025, a New Mexico court rejected his countersuit alleging malicious prosecution, ruling there was insufficient basis to proceed. Several civil lawsuits filed by Rust crew members were quietly settled out of court with undisclosed terms. In October 2025, Baldwin made headlines again after a car accident in East Hampton, when the Range Rover he was driving with his brother Stephen crashed into a roadside tree. Thankfully, both men were unharmed. Baldwin later posted on Instagram that he was grateful to be in one piece and jokingly apologized for wrecking Hilaria's car. The Rust tragedy resurfaced once more following the release of the documentary Last Take, Rust and the Story of Halyna, which revisited Hutchins's life and death. Though Baldwin was not involved, the film reignited public debate about his role in the incident. Amid the lingering scrutiny, Baldwin seems to have chosen quiet over confrontation. He rarely grants interviews, spending most of his time with family and engaging in community work around New York. During one TLC taping, he simply said, "I've spent my whole life performing. Now I just want to live, at least with the people I love." And perhaps that is what remains after everything. Not fame, not scandal, but a man learning how to live again. Surrounded by the laughter and chaos of his children, the exhaustion that comes with it, and the fragile peace of a home being slowly rebuilt where the world once fell apart. Alec Baldwin is one of those rare artists who is both celebrated and condemned. He has walked through 4 decades of fame in all its forms, praised for his talent, criticized for his temper, adored for his wit, and questioned for his all-too-human mistakes. Yet through it all, Baldwin has never disappeared. From a fiery young actor in New York to a political satirist on Saturday Night Live, and now a quiet father in The Baldwins, his journey mirrors America itself, a place that values comebacks as much as downfalls. Every chapter of his life reflects the real cost of fame, loneliness, pressure, and the kind of mistakes that can't be undone. Many may only remember him for Rust, or for his outbursts in front of cameras. But look closer, and you'll see a man still trying to make amends, learning to live more gently, refusing to let shame extinguish the humanity that remains. At 67, Alec Baldwin no longer searches for the next great role, only for the peace he has spent a lifetime chasing. And perhaps that is the hardest role he has ever had to play, the lead in his own life. With no director, no script, only time and forgiveness. So what about you? When you look back on Alec Baldwin's journey between glory and mistakes, between art and its cost, what stands out more? The performances he gave, or the way he kept standing after every fall? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to stay with us as we continue exploring the untold stories of Hollywood's greatest legends.